and I'm incredibly excited and delighted to welcome two august industry participants to the stage. Jeanine Poggi, editor of Ad Age, who is going to be running a fireside chat with Krishan Bhatia, talking about the road to converged TV measurement. Krishan and Jeanine, if you can turn your speakers on, your video on now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Sorry, Krishan, to leave you hanging over there.
No worries.
Good to see you. Of course, thank you, John. As John laid out in his opening remarks, it is certainly been a interesting year, to say the least, as it relates to measurement. The industry has undergone, I don't need to tell any of you, a major upheaval over the past year, with media companies adopting new forms of currency, questioning old ones. Krishan, can we sort of level set here in terms of maybe let's dream big, and in an ideal world, if everything is done right, what will convergent TV measurement look like? Or if it's done well, what could it look like?
Well, first of all, thanks to John for the introduction, and congrats on your new appointment. And thank you to Jane for her service over the years with this organization. I think it's an incredible body that allows us all to get together and shed a light, Jeanine, on many of the things that you just mentioned to drive innovation and progress on measurement. We've been on this journey for many years. I think the last time I actually participated at the CIMM Forum was in 2019. That was before ad-supported streaming took off in the way that we've seen it take off over the last 3 years. It was before the launch of Peacock. And now, as I mentioned, in most of my kind of industry remarks these days, we've just reached some critical tipping points that I think are the starting point, Jeanine, for your question. So last year, we are now at a point where ad-supported streaming exceeds subscription-based streaming in terms of the number of hours consumed in the US. So there's more time spent on ad-supported content in streaming than there is on non-ad-supported content. That's a massive proof point, I think, proving the narrative wrong that people were just flocking to streaming because it was ad-free. And of course, that will continue to be a component. But like in most media businesses, I think we will see ad-supported platforms and programming continuing to grow at a higher clip. With respect to our portfolio, we're now seeing more than a third of our total consumption across linear and all of our streaming and digital outlets already on streaming platforms. And our prediction is that over the next 18 months, we'll reach a 50-50 point. So to answer your question more tightly, what do we see? For marketers and any industry participant alike, you have to be able to reflect that total audience picture across all platforms, because that's where marketers ultimately want to get their brands towards. And historically, we just have not had the approach that does that in a accurate and timely and at scale fashion. And all the innovation that this forum is about to discuss with many of the industry participants today is really aimed at that first and foremost, providing a complete and accurate picture using the broadest possible footprint and scale of data and inputs to reflect consumption accurately, so marketers can plan and buy their media in a more precise and in a more effective way. I would say that's the goal at the high level. And then, of course, there are many other things that we're solving under the hood, but that's the primary goal.
So from last year to this year, what can brands and agencies do now as it relates to all of this that they couldn't do last year? What have been the incremental steps?
Well, I think you have a lot more available than is being taken advantage of already, to your question. First of all, I would offer that targeting based on outdated, broad demographics is really no longer the best way to buy media at scale. And when you think about digital media in general, we've long been in a multi-currency environment where you're going way beyond targeting on 18 to 49-year-olds. I would also say it does a disservice to all of us as consumers that we're being put in such broad buckets when really we are all, an increasingly diverse globe and nation, and we all have our own preferences and entertainment choices, and marketers, need to align more with those behavioral attributes, and us in our fullest sort of diverse composition than bucketing consumers into broad demographics. So I would say, first and foremost, the marketers that we've seen take the biggest leaps are the ones that have more granular information on their customers and their potential customers, and they're now matching that with programmers and media providers to be able to create target audiences, build media plans, optimize against those, and measure against those. All of that can already be done. What's holding it back, I think particularly in the television ecosystem, is that there's so much tied up in the legacy workflow and media mix modeling that's based on a singular and increasingly outdated currency that, you know, the areas we've seen most of the progress on is with categories and marketers that are able to leap out of that and leap ahead in terms of how to buy and plan and measure media in a smarter way. So, and I think you'll see tremendous amount of progress in the industry overall, both in the upfront marketplace this year, but even throughout and leading up to that. You know, we're seeing certainly streaming and digital, but also advanced ways of buying television grow at leaps and bounds, you know, at significant multiples to the overall ecosystem.
And NBCU has been going through an RFP looking at other forms of measurement. Can you talk a little bit about the state of that and where we are at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, you have to sort of jog the industry into innovation by supporting alternatives. And so last fall, I think as most of the participants today at this point know, we had a call for action and innovation, and we issued that in the form of an RFP to the broadest possible set, we thought, of measurement providers that we thought could help on this journey. We sent it to 54 companies, if I remember correctly, and the response was overwhelming. We've now had over 120 companies reach out and raise their hands and said, we want in, we want to help solve for some of these.
Didn't even know there were 120 companies out there doing all this.
Exactly, and there are probably new ones being created, Jeanine, as we speak, which is just a phenomenal result in and of itself, right? The other thing that we did is not to evaluate that in a black box fashion, but to be really transparent. And I think a lot of that will be shared in this forum today, quite frankly. Kelly Apkarian is joining one of the panels later today, and you have many of the companies that we are engaging with on panels throughout the day. I think that in and of itself is another massive leap forward, that we're talking about it, you know, in a transparent way, and we're sharing our respective ways of evaluating and making progress. This clearly requires the industry, buy side and sell side, to agree on new solutions. And so no company should be, you know, doing that in a black box. And we created a measurement innovation forum that, again, many of the participants today and the companies are invited to. We've gone through our initial evaluation of those 120 companies. We've identified now for the audience measurement category, which is one of 6 categories that we're evaluating, 8 new currency contenders for audience measurement on a cross-platform basis. I think John actually mentioned all of them at the outset in his agenda today, so I'm glad that they will all be participating and adding to that. And so I think the net result of this will be that as we go through the rest of this year, we will see many of those providers starting to chip away in partnering with marketers and with agencies to transact in a different manner. And that, I think, you know, will continue as we go into the upfront marketplace and into the next few years, and will ensure that all the nooks and crannies that we have historically not been able to measure are now being accounted for, and that we're focused not only on counting audiences, but on the impact that marketers' creative has in terms of consumer impact and in terms of driving their sales, right? We've had this relentless focus at the top of the funnel in measuring exposures and impressions, and that in of itself requires innovation. But really what marketers care about is, for every dollar spent, how am I driving people into my store? How am I converting them, you know, in my e-commerce channels? How am I getting people to watch movies in theaters, download apps in the app stores? So I think that entire focus is another massive transition that the media ecosystem, particularly the television ecosystem, is going through. And we now have all these opportunities to be able to prove what everyone knows is the most effective media platform out there in terms of driving mass brand awareness.
How will all of the new measurement solutions out there impact the upfronts, which has long, of course, been based on like one currency?
Well, as I mentioned, I think we're going to have multiple currencies that marketers and agencies transact on. We already do. I think it's a misnomer that there's a single currency that drives, the entire marketplace. In digital and streaming, most companies, including ourselves, already transact on multiple currencies. And it really depends on ultimately who you're targeting and what measurement approach you're using, whether you're using broad reach audiences, advanced audiences. We use Comcast set-top box data, for example, for our advanced linear business. In our partnership with OpenAP, we're accepting ComScore, Nielsen, and soon many of the alternative currency providers that you're going to be featuring at this summit today. So I think you're going to see the innovation result in diversification of how buy side and sell side partner and who they use, both for the inputs in terms of creating plans and who they use for the outputs in terms of measuring the efficacy.
How are buyers and brands responding to the changes in currency measurement? Like, what are the concerns?
So it's interesting. If you talk to marketers, I think most of them, will sort of say, I can't believe we're even debating this. Because in the end, a marketer is, looking to affect their business directly. And it is less about GRPs to them and more about, every dollar returned on their investment in media. So I think we're seeing a tremendous amount of support from marketers as we're in the Olympics and coming out of the Super Bowl over the weekend. As you know, we're testing iSpot with over 30 clients right now to train them on alternative ways of getting more accurate cross-platform real-time information. So, and that response in and of itself was overwhelming. As soon as we went out to the marketplace to, ask agencies, in this case, Publicis and PMX, have been our first partner in this for partnership. Clients started to line up for it because, of course, everyone wants better measurement and they want more real-time information and they want to measure what matters most. And that's just the beginning. We've been at this for a few weeks, testing and learning, and those learnings will, I think, translate into much more massive adoption across the board.
So how will cross-platform video buying work in a world with multiple currencies?
Well, again, as I mentioned at the outset, we already are able to accept multiple currencies today, and buy side and sell side. So we have built technology, quite frankly, that's interoperable with multiple currency inputs, and we can optimize plans against it, and we can measure the outcomes based on it. For the option that includes cross-programmer planning and buying, which is really where marketers and agencies ultimately need to go, we're partnered up with OpenAP, and I think they will be talking later today as well about their advances in how they're bringing together the entire cross-platform TV ecosystem for marketers and agencies to do this across all providers. They've partnered up with, I think, 6 alternative currency providers. Again, they overlap in high degree to what you outlined at the top. And so you'll start to see the availability of multiple currencies in the marketplace, and depending on the marketers and their target audiences and the measurement providers that they believe most accurately reflect who they're trying to reach. Again, I think you'll see the market diversify in terms of adopting that. And that's just a reality. If you even think about Nielsen going forward, Nielsen One is going to swap out their currency as they launch Nielsen One. There will be no comparability to what it used to be. So we all as an industry have to be prepared that all the inputs and outputs are changing and that there will be multiple options. And it would be great if we can all align on a handful, to make things easier. But I think we all need to be prepared for a very, very soon eventuality that we will be operating with multiple providers and multiple currencies.
How much of the upfront deals last year were done outside of Nielsen, and how much are you expecting that to grow this year?
Well, I can tell you, upfront aside, that across our media business, probably a third of our business or so is already transacted on currencies that are not Nielsen based. And I would assume that that is going to shift drastically, as we go into this upfront marketplace and the next year. And again, our strategy is not to be exclusive, to any single currency provider. It is to provide the best of breed solutions to our marketers and agency partners, and be able to transact business in both a smart and a seamless fashion, depending on the needs that they're looking to solve for.
Great. Thank you, Krishan. Pleasure always speaking with you.
Thank you, Jeanine. Thanks for having me.
Rob, back over to you, John.
Thank you so much, Krishan and Jeanine. That was a really fascinating insight into into the work that NBCU is doing. We know the industry hugely appreciates the efforts you're making.